Hello and welcome to the Independent Dealer Podcast, brought to you by Buckeye Dealership Consulting. We continue our How I Built This series this week with a real legend in the industry, Mr. Tommy Brandis. I think if you've been around, you've heard that name, you've seen him in the community and the Facebook. He's just a great wealth of knowledge and a guy that always gives back.
For sure. One great thing that he said at the end, so make sure you listen to the end, was
don't give it away.
What I thought was take your ego out of it. That's what I'm gonna say is take your ego out of it. But he talked about how from being a bank collector to getting in this business, then finally owning the whole thing, Jeff. I mean, what a journey this guy's done.
Yeah. And he's in Pennsylvania. He's got a single store right now doing about 15 buy here, pay here, 100% buy here, pay here, 5 or 6 employees. But really just, 30 years in the industry, just a fine-tuned operation. So this is a great episode. We're going to tell you guys to make sure you visit our sponsors so that we don't have to interrupt you during this interview. But Buckeye Dealership Consulting, obviously, they bring you this podcast every single week. They're great sponsors, stand behind us, and a great place to do your reinsurance. So obviously, if you have not set up your reinsurance at this point in the year, get it set for 2023. Get that company going so you can get that long-term wealth put away.
Yeah, hit the ground running January 1. Also, our friends at Passtime, Jeff, protect your ass if you're in the retail business or the buy here, pay here business. There's only one way to do that, and GPS is really, really the way to make it work.
Yeah, they're great guys. I reordered yesterday, and I shoot off one email, and he shoots me back a receipt, and it's done. And a couple days later, it's such a hassle-free way to make sure you're covered. And of course, guys, my favorite time of year, tax time's coming up. We are getting ready to get our fourth quarter program started in December and January, where we're going to estimate their tax returns. We defer their down payment. We get them rolling today. So I'm doing training with all my sales staff today on how to sell the deferred down payment, what the best structure looks like, how to make sure we're covered, or at least put in as many backstops to make sure that customer is successful and gets their tax returns back to us.
If we don't get their tax money, Jeff, make it easy for them, right?
Yep. And here's the episode.
You are listening to the Independent Dealer Podcast with hosts Luke Godwin and Jeff Watson.
Yeah, the beginning, 30 plus years ago, I worked at a local bank, and I was senior collector and in charge of liquidating repossessions at the auctions and such. So to wrap it up pretty quick, my repo guy knew the owner of A&T Chevrolet and Subaru, which was Bruce Allen at the time. And Bruce had this idea. He was out at NADA in San Francisco and ran into I guess it was Rick Reeves had a seminar going on about buy here, pay here in a box, which was Gold Key Credit back then. So he bought the business and he was looking for a guy to run the business. And my repo guy told him about me, and I interviewed, and it didn't work out good at first because they weren't looking for a banker, collector, or a sales guy. And my second job was selling skis to support my skiing habit. So I didn't fit the bill, but after I spoke to their, I guess I was a different guy because I believed in, most of the customers that I was repossessing were good people, So after a couple interviews with Rick and a couple of his top guys, I decided to take a chance on me, and 30 years later, here we are.
Wow. So I want to know what happened between then and now, like that 30 years. That's what we're going to dig into. But you started out as being kind of the general manager in this new car store guy, right? He said, hey,
correct,
I heard about this buy here, pay here thing. It sounds kind of cool. Let's get into it. How did that first start? I mean, did he say, hey, I got, $100,000, let's put them on notes, or, hey, let's just sell them off the side of our new car store? Or was it a full
that's kind of
operation?
What it was. He had there's a used car dealership across the street from his location. And basically his idea was a little side diversification thing of the place to offload trade-ins.
Mm-hmm.
So, just sell 10, 15 a month. He had no idea what it was. He heard about buy here, pay here. Rick's Gold Key program at the time was like buy here, pay here in a box. It was like it wasn't a franchise, but it almost was.
Mhm.
You know, everything showed up. The software shows up, and the popcorn machine shows up, and the Coke machine shows up. And I went out for a 5-day training. They call it a boot camp. I call it more like training for the SEALs without being stuffed in the ocean. You know, long training days. But came back and just kind of started and sold car one, and we had 111 cars. Started June 1st, had about 111 cars on the books by December, and only 2 charge-offs. And our accountants came to us and when, well, where's all the losses on this thing? Because you owe 140, you owe $140,000 in taxes. And we're like, what do you mean? So thank God we had the new car dealership, or we would have been out of business at that time. And that's when Bruce put the money in. There was really no money to put in the beginning because it was all his trade-ins and some stuff we were buying at the auction. And you have to realize, I mean, the cars we were buying then were, you know, a 78 Chevy Chevette for $350 and selling, you know, reconning it and selling it for $995 or $1195. You know, when we got to 1995 cars, we thought we were, you know, on the road to major success.
Our business started at the same time, Tommy, a little bit older, and I remember exactly what you're talking about. Those cars that you were buying for $150 or $200, and you were selling them for $1,200, $1,500. It was easy back then, you know, to make these numbers work.
Yeah, 9.9%, 40 weeks at like $45 a week, and you were done. So you had no charge off because you were out of the loan before the customer had a problem, you know?
Yeah, but you get from the payment and put it in your pocket, so you could try to hide some of it.
Yeah. So we grew after we paid that first, you know, obviously he lent the money, paid the taxes, and then we paid that down. And he never really took the money out of the business. It was just kind of this thing that just built, you know? So
let's go back to what you did before you got into this business, before you lured away. And I think it's so important that you had that banking background, those collections background, you understood the asset. How important was that to get this thing going?
Yeah, I think, I don't know. I had a knowledge of vehicles. I had a knowledge of the auction. I had a knowledge of people having trouble with credit, you know. But other than that, it really was completely different because I started selling cars to the people I repossessed, you know, because the bank, there was no working things out with a bank.
Right.
You know, and in our business, that's what you got to do. You know, I've said it on numerous occasions and I picked it up at a 20 group years ago. But we're in the car business to create a relationship business.
Ooh, I like that.
And it just got me. It figured that out, you know. And the first car I ever sold to Pat and Glenn, we just sold last year their 4th generation, their grandchild, a car, you know. So we sold their parent. They bought the first car, 1982 Chevy Celebrity in blue. Chevy Celebrities were the point car back in '92, man. They were the bomb, you know, especially if you had a Euro Sport. Anybody who's been in the business long enough knows what a Chevy Celebrity Euro Sport looks like.
100%. with the floor shifter, the Euro Sport.
With the floor shifter, it's all over, you know. So that's kind of how it's been, and I still have, you know, customers' kids buying cars from me today from back then. So
yeah, you know, last night you talk about that. Last night I had to go to Home Depot, and I walk in and I needed some help, and I walk up to this guy, and as soon as I saw him, I'm like, "Hey, man, I sold you a car years ago." He's like, "Yes, you did, Luke. I know exactly." He said, "I cannot believe you remembered me," and he said, "You know, I was just in the military, and I've already retired from the military now." And he said, "Darn, you've been doing this a long time." Yeah, I have.
Yeah, it's crazy. That's what I said. You know, I feel like I started when I was 4 years old, but you know, to be a back in the day guy and still be in your early 50s is kind of crazy. You know,
or mid 40s, yeah. So
or mid 40s, yeah.
All right, let you guys old people reminisce about the good old days.
Yeah,
right.
Tell me, So I want to know more of your story, right? This is how I built this series. So when you continue to build that dealership with the help of the new car store, I mean, what point did you guys get to? Was it kind of slow growth the whole time, or did you realize, hey, we really got this thing figured out. Let's ramp it up and take it to, try to really maximize this thing.
Well, one of the great we ended up joining. I'm trying to think when we joined that 20. It was Chuck Bonanno's first 20 group, and I don't think that was till like about 98. I think is when we joined that. But there was the Gold Key group had like its own 20 group because everybody was on the same software, so they had their own conventions and things like that. So in 1995, we opened up a second location about 25 miles north of us. Mm-hmm. And because that's what you did. Back then it was small towns. There was no internet, or the internet was just starting. So your only form of advertising was the penny power or word of mouth. And word of mouth was powerful then because you also didn't take credit cards. So, and the majority of the people were on weekly payments. So every Friday, 75, 80% of your customers would be walking through the door, so you knew them. And it was, you knew everybody in the town and the town knew you. You couldn't go out without, hey, Tommy, shaking hands, knowing that person, knowing the kids, knowing if the dog was sick, knowing they got a new puppy, things like that. So we opened up the second location in Allentown in 95 and ran that up until 2013. And it was a big old dealership. And by that time, anybody who has one location now and goes to two or has done it knows that you're not opening a second location. It works like three, because it takes a whole lot more time to travel between the two, to monitor them both, to put out fires at both and all that. So I could just never get two to run right at the same time. I could always get one to run right, and then there was something wrong with the other one. I can count on one hand where I had great months at both of them. At the same time. So in 2013, we shut that location down, and I opened up. We had an RFC, and I opened up a off-site finance company, like in a strip mall. It looked just like an American Financial or anything like that, right in Quakertown, where I'm located now, which is about dead center, ground zero between Allentown and my first location. So really, if you drew a 20-mile radius around Quakertown, that's my lending area still today. Mm-hmm. So we figured we open that there, that we could still market the Allentown customers, because at that, now you're getting into everybody's paying ACH or credit cards. So you really only met the customer once, or if they had a problem, then they would come in. So,
so you grew it to the second store and then decided to trim it back to one in about 2013.
We were doing, our goal was to do like 45 a month, and we were always hitting like 35, and some months we'd hit 45, and once or twice we'd break 50, and that was cool. Yeah. But the shuffling of the cars back, we had I ended up opening up, I never opened up a service center, which is probably more of a regret now that I look back on it, but maybe a blessing also.
Why is that?
I don't know. I look at it today, and the cost of recon and all that. I think if I had one regret, I probably would have opened up a service center and kept one location instead of going with two and never opening up a service center. But because we were renting next to it, so we had a detail shop and inventory control center. But yeah, we're shuffling cars back and forth, and this person needs that. So it got to the point where it's like, okay, this is too much.
And you've outsourced every repair from day one.
From day one, correct.
Wow, that's definitely a lot of spent money, isn't it?
Oh man, yeah. I made a lot of people rich. I still struggle with it now because it's the old pigs get fat, hogs get slaughtered, and you start with a new recon center. And they're great, and then all of a sudden the prices start creeping up, and then everything needs this, and then we raise our labor rate, and it's like, oh man, here we go again.
Then you hop to a new one.
Same things happen in the department too, and I own it. But tell me, do you still have that that offsite RFC or finance company?
When COVID hit, when I moved, what had happened, there was a location that opened up about a quarter mile away from the RFC that was perfect for a car lot. Really, right in the center. We have one major road going through Quakertown, and within a par 5 of my car lot, I have Kia, Ford, Chevy, Mitsubishi, Hyundai. Who am I missing? All the players. So we're right there. So during COVID, we ended up shutting. I mean, it was beautiful. It was fun to sit in. It was a great. You walked in. It was a real nice office, and I had a big office in the back. With all my, sponsor footballs and basketballs and whatever. And but when you're sitting there with COVID and nothing to do, you're looking around going, well, if we add in the back and make a little office in the back here, we can just bring the finance company in house. And once you check your ego and say, yeah, it's really cool to have this finance company off site, and a big office, and then you look down and you're saving about $40,000 a year, in overhead and aggravation. The decision was pretty easy. So yeah, so we shut that in 2020. Why we were closed, we ended up bringing everything in house by the end of 2020, and now we're all just one big happy family under one roof.
That's good. I've always thought that would be the next kind of, if you did want to open a second location, it would be to do that, and then you could do some outside lending. But it sounds like, it sounds like you could just do that all in house.
Correct. Yeah, I'm at the point now after COVID. Both my kids are grown. My future son-in-law is actually my sales manager, Gunner, and he's got more talent. I started in the business at 23, and he's 24, and he doesn't think he knows anything, but man, the kid knows so much compared to where we were back when his age. So we're kind of building the business where it can be his, and he can decide if he wants to grow it bigger, or at 25 cars a month off that lot, he makes a lot of money, and it's really, in the grand scheme of things, a part-time job. Because that's how I kind of built my business, to be able to be with my kids instead of growing it to 2, 3, 5, 10 stores, and working, so much.
Well, walk us through that, Tommy. At what point in this journey did you take over the ownership? Because if it was the new car guy that got you started, did you buy in equity over time, or did you buy him out, or how did that transition happen?
He was really smart. He was A&T Chevy was Allen and Thompson, and Thompson was a huge dealer in our area, and my owner partner Bruce worked for him. And long story short, they had some business dealings, and Jack Thompson helped Bruce Allen open up A&T Chevrolet, which Bruce ultimately bought from Jack. So when I was about 27, 28, but he must have seen it happening, because it was about 4 or 5 years into business, and I'm making good money, and I'm 27, 28. I'm like, okay, is this what I'm doing the rest of my life? Selling old cars off of this little car lot. Is that the whole game plan? And he came to me and said, look, I'm not going to give you a raise. He goes, you'll just piss it away on, booze and strippers or whatever we were doing at the time. and he goes, but this is what we're going to do. And he started giving me a percentage of stock each year. It was small in the beginning, but that was my bonus. Each at the end of each year, I got a percentage of stock. So it just grew, and it got bigger and bigger and bigger. And then we got to the point, probably I was, about 10, 12, but we started talking about 15 years ago, and it was like, he wasn't too sure about it. And then, long story short, we just sat down and said, look, we need to put something in place. And that's because I had about 18% at the time. So I had a good chunk of money, that if I wanted to walk away and do something on my own or whatever, I could have, I said, but, we got to set this up for you and me and for your family if something happens to you. So that's where we worked. That's when we had to create the RFC to create losses to be able to purchase the business for what it was actually worth and not 100% of the receivables. So he was real fair. He floated the note, and I paid him on that loan. Unfortunately, so he passed away, and then ended up getting with Primal End about 2016, and paid off the estate and everything, and now Primal End's my new owner.
Yeah, I don't know if you want to be them or the spouse, the widow of ex-partner, that, or an estate with a bunch of kids that now all
that was the thing. They
I'll
had a
take
little
Primal
bit, I'll take Primal End. That's what it was. Primal End thinks logically all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's true. Yeah, I take the emotion out of it. So what's your day-to-day now? I mean, how are you involved? It sounds like you've got a future son-in-law that's handling a lot of the operations. Is it something you're still in it daily? Or are you there?
I'm at the, well, I'm sitting in DC today.
I definitely see you traveling a lot. So
so I can travel. Fortunately with the internet, I'm always in the numbers, and I track all the numbers. I know what's going on and all that. And I'm in the dealership probably 4 times a week, not sometimes for 6-7 hours, sometimes for 2 or 3. I kind of buy the cars. They do the stuff that's in. I get bored real quick if I'm in the dealership and we're not selling.
Yeah.
So I can only clean up so many things or whatever. So you know what? I'm going to go out and take a walk in the woods or something.
So tell me, you're a numbers guy. I love that. I am as well. Can you share with the audience some of the numbers you're tracking daily?
I created a spreadsheet. I'm going to call it like a mini 20 group composite, years ago, which tracks, and I manually put those numbers in every week myself.
Yep.
I've been offered the opportunity to have the report auto generated, and I don't want it. So it takes me about an hour a week. I do it. It used to be Wednesday nights, and then I changed it to Friday, so I have the weekend to do it. When I got a little busier doing stuff. But the first page is gross profit and cash collected and delinquency, and then the second page is retail and wholesale cars sold that week, and then the third page is in stock inventory, resale and wholesale. So, and I've been doing this since 2002. So I'll do a 10-week section, and then I'll take that 10-week average and plunk it into another spreadsheet, which gives me a trend. So I have awesome amounts of historical data on my business, which is kind of fun. That's the kind of stuff in buy here, pay here. If you don't know your numbers, I don't know how you sleep at night. I know my numbers, and I don't sleep at night. So
that's maybe why you don't sleep at night. The rest of us are just oblivious and a certain amount of stupidity.
Sometimes you just I've seen a lot of people, and that's it's a scary thing about this business actually is I've seen a lot of people walk around in oblivion and still make a lot of money in spite of themselves.
I've seen that in 20 group numerous times, and you're like, how in the heck does this person just print money? Oh my God.
Yeah, this dude's to the left of me in the book, and he don't even know what the hell's going on in this store. I'm like, maybe I'm the problem,
I think sometimes we can be analytical and slow sales down. I mean, maybe, I don't know. Maybe that's what it is. I don't know.
No, you know what? It's true, because there's a lot of things that I've done for so long. And finally, Gunner is getting a voice and saying, "Yo, dude, that's not how it's done anymore, and this is what we have to do." And finally, I'm starting to hear enough going, "Yeah, maybe the kid's right." Just because it worked back when we scribbled on ledger cards for notes. It may not be so true today. So yeah, sometimes us old guys got to get out of the way.
Yeah, Tommy, that makes me think of two things. When you've been in the business that long, and especially in one community, two questions for you. Do you end up knowing so many people in the community, or, I mean, it seems like at some point you would have sold and or repoed everyone in your town, and you kind of like ran through the customer base. Does that happen?
The town's a little bigger. Quakertown's about 30,000 people, but really Allentown, Bethlehem, and Easton is a half hour north, and you're talking a couple million people up there.
Okay.
So yeah, we do have a lot of repeats, and a lot of people know who we are. but we've created the relationship for
Yeah.
that many years. So, you're always going to have the 1-star review, but that's usually somebody that comes in and they don't take care of it. I can justify all my 1-star reviews.
Yeah, they didn't actually interact with you. So what about yourself? I mean, talking about burning out customers, how do you not burn out yourself after that amount of time?
Just kind of keeping it fresh, going to, always looking for new things, always looking to learn. Now, getting where I'm at and not really, I don't really need to grow the business. So monitoring it the way it is, I think what's fun about it now is you could just keep adding horsepower to a motor, but that doesn't make the car faster, So now you go through and figure out what you got to do. Now you need suspension, or maybe you need a different transmission, so I'm kind of like fine tuning the machine, and the new fun thing to do is to see how efficient I can make this machine work on 20 sales a month, and then go out and start up. COVID took away so much from all of us, our hobbies and all that thing. So to be able to sit back and look and get my hobbies back, that my kids are, before it was the kids, we always did things with the kids, and kids had, events and activities and all that. So, but now it's kind of a new phase, so I'm really kind of learning as I go now, but yeah.
That's great. I mean, I think sometimes, having not been in it as long as you are, but it definitely can wear on a dealer when you talk about all those, the KPIs and the numbers you're looking at, and just the fact that you're not able, the formula you had, even 24 months ago doesn't work anymore. So
Right.
I constantly struggle with wrapping my brain around the fact with like, man, I'm selling a $15,000 car now. Like, how's anyone affording this? I don't even know how this is working. Like,
I sit and look at it every day, and just because there's a day of reckoning coming in our end in terms of severity of charge off. Because we're still selling a 2010 Focus, but the car that was 40, before COVID, my model was a $4,500 ACV for $99.95 for 30 months, knock it out of the park, now that $4,500 car is a $7,000 car, but it's the same freaking car.
Yeah.
Now you got to mark it up to 12.9 or 13.9 to make your numbers work. And all you're doing is adding, charge off at the end of the loan. So we don't know. We're in uncharted water. All we can do is, and I think that's kind of where I'm almost afraid, and it's maybe hurt me in a sense, is I haven't sold as many cars as I probably should have over the last few years. But now that I'm seeing things kind of stabilize and prices coming down a little bit, and the good customers coming back, that 580 credit score is going to be back in our dealerships in the next 6 months. They're showing up already.
Mm-hmm.
When I used to watch them just walk across the street and get a new Hyundai. Mm-hmm. So part of the waiting game for me probably cost me some money, and made the struggle a little tougher in the past few years. But I think it's going to pay off now in the next few years, because I was around, for the 2008 crash, and I think I made more money from 2010 to 2012 than I have since 2012, because it was just, those years were magical. And I think that's coming back.
Yeah, we always talk about the ride to the bottom being very painful, Yeah. Like you said, and if we get kind of hit double because now the cars that we sold for a ton are now worth even less. Yeah, so you might have been good by being cautious. You're just going to have a little less of a severity of charge off,
I've already seen charge offs go up by $3,000 or $4,000.
My November is going to be record.
Unfortunately, our frequency is better than ever, but the severity, because now you're just writing off. When I look at a $5,000 balance now, I'm like, man, that person's paid off.
100%. I call that a low balance now.
That's a low, about $5,000 account's a low balance, when that used to be like, a new account. So it's a definite change. I'm glad I have I'm glad I have the history of what's happened before, and I'm so fortunate, and we all are, to have avenues like we're discussing here, like we're on right now with a podcast, and we were at the Super Forum and the Buy Here Pay Here success page and your page and Amanda's page and Jim Rhodes with the morning show, and like all this stuff is just so we're so fortunate to have all that now, to bounce off of. We have one question, you bounce it off of 400 people in a half an hour. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, Tommy, you need to be commended for what you've given back to Street. You help people. You go out of your way to do that. What's the one thing that you can take from your 30 years experience and say right now thing that every dealer should be that you do?
You become an entrepreneur for freedom. I think I heard that someplace. I'm not a really smart guy. I'm just a good listener. So I usually hear a lot of things like that. And I think you have to ask yourself, why do you want the certain, what are your goals and what are you really doing it for, and why are you really doing it? Do you want to be king of the world and sell 1 million cars? But why? I take it back to when my oldest daughter, who will be turning 25 shortly and is on her way to become a physical therapist. I got to call her doctor, which is like crazy. But she was in her crib on a Friday morning. So we're talking 23 years ago, and I left before she woke up in the typical Buy Here, Pay Here Friday, fires to put out and BS left and right. And I got home after she was asleep. And I was like, man, I missed an entire day of my daughter's life because of work, because of BS at my job that I run, that it's my choice. So at that point, I made the choice to kind of keep the business providing for the family and providing for the things I need. And that's it. It supports the family. It's allowed me to travel. It's allowed me to, if you follow my Facebook page, it's my journal. And I think if you're getting into any business or running any business like this, if there's any advice I can give you is worry about the commas and periods in your life, not the commas in your checkbook. And run the business successful enough that you can enjoy your life. So I've done it all. I tried to grow to 2 and was going to grow to 3 and had this and that and 15 people working for me and I'm making just as much money now with 4 and sitting here talking to you guys on a Wednesday.
Well, that's amazing advice that everybody should take.
Yeah, Tommy, I think we got to wrap it up on that, man. That really drives home so much of what we do here. So appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I appreciate this. Thanks for reaching out. Like I said, I feel like I made it if I get to be on your guys' podcast.
That's a quote right there. We're taking that out, turn it into a commercial.
You bet. Hey, you guys have a great Thanksgiving. Thanks for having me.
You too, buddy. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, bye.
Dealers helping dealers. Please leave us a review and subscribe. The Independent Dealer Podcast.